Wonderful. Well, I'm going to just do a quick introduction to kick us off. But good morning, everyone, and very good morning to you, Sally. I know it's still very early where you are in the West Coast, but
Not
good
too
morning,
bad.
everyone. My name is Sharnae Sanders, and for those of you I might be seeing for the first time, hello, I serve as the program manager at COAC Detroit. In case you are not familiar, COAC is a resource hub for nonprofits and community organizations in Southeast Michigan. Our location is located in Detroit's New Center neighborhood, but our team primarily has been working virtually as we started upgrading our space. We exist to support nonprofits and community organizations so they can better serve their communities. We do this through hosting various programs, as well as supporting with administering various grant opportunities as well. This is a very special day. This is our kickoff session to our cross-sector collaboration series, and we are so delighted to have Sally Dominguez facilitating these 4 sessions. Sally is a futurist, inventor, and entrepreneur working with IKEA, Sony, and countless other organizations to help them strategize with moonshot thinking and modern resilience. You all are definitely in for a treat today, and I hope you're excited to interact with new people you may have never met before and still be able to build community even in the virtual space. At this moment, I'm going to definitely pass it over to Sally. And again, if you all can just rename yourselves to your name, organization, and whichever number for the group that you most identify with, that would be very helpful. All right, I'll pass the virtual mic over to you, Sally.
Thank you, Sharnae. Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. You know, I know that we are probably all pretty zoomed out by now. I know I am. I don't normally do Zoom stuff anymore because I'm so done with it, and I bet you all are too. However, I absolutely love working with COACT. And even though I keep saying I need to come to Detroit, I also really appreciate that you guys have been so successful at taking it online, and I love to be involved with you all. I've been doing stuff with COACT for a couple of years now, and it's super rewarding and most of all impactful and purposeful. So thank you for being with me, and thank you for giving me your time. Now, before I start sharing the slides, I just want to preempt that my stuff is not easy. It's not one where you can kind of be on your phone and be doing it at the same time. It's a lot. I will share the slides afterwards, so you don't need to take notes. All of the stuff that's on the slides you'll have. I'll also share it to the LinkedIn group that we've created so that you can continue the discussions later. We're engineering the breakout groups so that you have very diverse groups to talk across disciplines and across specializations, which is why we're asking you to put the numbers 1 through 5 to help Sharnae put you in groups that kind of separate out and mix different perspectives on what we're all doing. And this is the first 4, and this one is negative space. And I also want to preempt by saying negative space sounds negative. Of course, negative space is simply everything that's not your primary focus. And what I found in my adventurous thinking strategy that's now, I don't know, pretty old, but I developed it a while ago for schools and ended up making it for organizations, and it's working nicely, is that negative space is really great in that it helps you find areas to optimize and areas to increase impact. And it helps you look at areas of what you do, the services you provide, the physical space you're in, the mental space you're in. It helps you find areas that you don't normally think about, that we can now rethink in different ways. So with that, I'm going to share the screen and get moving. And we don't need the first one because you've already done all your numbers and letters and things, so that's great. So I'm going to go to this and throw it down. Now, if there is a button I just noticed that's new to Zoom that says, if I'm going too fast, you can tell me to slow down. Almost inevitably, you'll probably press it. One of you will, I guess. There's a lot of information, and I really want to give you tons of time in breakout. So I'm also available on LinkedIn on that group. If you have any follow-up questions, if, for instance, you're an introvert and tend to digest information a little slower, but bring all of that meaning that introverts bring, that totally different way of processing, I am available to answer your questions, tomorrow or next week. Sharnae, you'll just keep letting people, yes, you will. So let's go with negative space. It sounds negative, but it's actually loaded with opportunity for greater impact. And that's why I find it exciting. And in all that I do in this era that we're operating in, era of profound mistrust, an era of exponential change, the most important thing to remember every day is that what we know today, our experience, our knowledge, cannot limit us to the strategy we're creating for tomorrow, now more than ever, because we're seeing change at an accelerating rate, an exponential rate. And I think COVID showed us the power of exponential change, the power of exponential spread. If you consider that across the world, this is the rate of change, it suddenly makes sense that we can't rely on the way we've always strategized, which meant that we could spot patterns and predict them into the future. We're in a profoundly different era, and we actually need to think in profoundly different ways. So this is my adventurous thinking strategy. It is 5 lenses that help throw you out of expertise and knowledge and into a mental state of what I call bearable discomfort. It's difficult, but it's actually exhilarating. It actually makes you feel alive, because once you feel this different type of thinking, you realize the massive possibilities you have to really think at greater scale for greater impact. And it makes, human creativity, what an incredible thing. It can't be replicated by a machine. And that's what's so important about this era, about you also as leaders, helping your team, helping your stakeholders, helping the people you serve, also understand the importance of this kind of big scale creative thinking. So we're not going to hit all of the lenses during these 4 sessions, but we are going to hit negative space, thinking sideways, which is about implicit bias and getting around that, and thinking backwards, which is about how do we realize our strategy, our goals in an accelerated time frame for maximum impact, but also with frugal innovation. And finally, we're going to talk about modern resilience. This one is about negative space, but I just want to set the scene first. You're probably all feeling the disruption that the world is feeling. The US is a little ahead of, say, a country like Australia. In terms of the way this is hitting. But essentially, the reason we're feeling this massive disruption is that COVID forced every industry almost overnight to digitize, to go from in-person, person to person, up close and personal, to online, digital, and remote learning and communication, selling, and strategy. And what this meant was, some areas like medicine were really ready for it. Other areas like the restaurant trade, education, which thought it was ready and has now realized it was profoundly not ready, were hit so hard. And so we see in every vertical this level of disruption. At the same time, digitization, the sharing online, we lose control, but it also changes human behavior at a scale that we've never seen before. The sharing of real news, the sharing of fake news, equally change human behavior. And again, this level of disruption is because we've never seen the level of human behavioral change, which is suddenly affected by the level of digitization. So it's a crazy world. And what's happened is, it's what futurists like me were predicting was going to happen in about 4 years' time. It's just early. It's the 4th revolution, which is the rise of machine intelligence and the reaction, the equal rise of human creativity to harness those technical tools, that technology, for greater impact. So my specialty is in mindset shift, specifically in helping humans explore their creative abilities to harness this technology. And it's why Gen Z, the under 25s, is so interesting right now, because you hear a lot about how this new generation are digital natives. But what that really means, the fundamental difference between everybody over about 25 and these people, is that they grew up with technology in their hand as a tool. The rest of us have seen the technology develop and are kind of in awe of it, and thus don't always treat it as the simple tool that it is. We might say, hey, we need to digitize. Oh, we need artificial intelligence. We've got to collect data. But we don't start with, if we do this, we get this incredible effect. I want to achieve this amazing impact. What tools do I have? It's why it's so important to have reverse mentoring right now, because kids that have grown up with a phone in their hand as a simple tool are not in thrall of it and are able to help us come up with really interesting and impactful strategies where creativity is at the top, and the technology to realize it follows through and allows us to deliver. So Shanae, you'll deal with all those admits, right? They're just popping up on my screen, so I'm just checking. All right, so the level of fear in the world right now, this is a really great report. And if you don't know about it, it's a great one. I look at it all the time. The Edelman Trust Barometer surveys a huge number of people across the world in very diverse countries about what do people trust and what do people fear. And considering the industries that many of you are in, this is super important and definitely applies to Americans as much as anywhere else. It's interesting. The levels of fear generally, the levels of mistrust are at all-time highs. It's unprecedented. But the fear is not about COVID. That's a distant fourth. The fear is job security, climate change, and cyber piracy, cyber hacking. And so these are kind of the default pieces we need to hit in anything we're doing to simply address the level of fear in community, the level of fear in individuals and families, and also to ensure that we have trust by showing people that we care, showing people that we're trying to deal with this stuff. And I know that a lot of you are dealing particularly with the job loss and the job security and the job fear. But I just want to put that out there as something really important, because for us, leading with it, dealing with it, helping uplift people who are feeling powerless and afraid, we need to have the growth mindset. That means we're not afraid of change and we're okay to leap into the unknown because we have creative confidence. We know that as humans, we have this incredible, unique ability to make the unexpected connections that result in innovation. And so right now, this kind of thinking where we don't need knowledge, we don't need to know that it's been done before, but we have the confidence to move into the unknown guided by purpose is super important. So before I hit negative space, just to show you the fundamental difference between the way we've always strategized, thought about our issues, set goals, the fundamental difference between the way we've always done it with linear thinking, with a line of sight and a degree of control, and the way we're now moving forward required to change. So you can see here, linear, right? This idea of linear progress. So step by step, so incremental improvement. The light bulb turns to the LED, a table becomes a knockdown flat pack. You know, this idea of linear progress to make things progressively better has been the way that organizations have seen growth pretty consistently, has been the way that we've kind of looked at progress. And the beautiful thing about linear progress is we can generally see a horizon and set a goal. We can minimize the variables and we can work our way towards that with regular check-ins, ROIs, whatever it is. Exponential change is a different beast. It is constantly accelerating, which means there is no horizon. And if there's no horizon, you cannot set a simple goal. And this is where the role of purpose is incredibly important. You use purpose now as the North Star to guide you into a couple of different strategies, and you try various approaches within that to try and get to this ultimate purpose. So knowing your purpose and having an authentic and impactful purpose has never been more important. Not only because once we set our purpose, say mine is spreading optimism to decrease fear, I can now look around for people with similar purposes who may be way outside the industry in which I'm working, and gives me incredible opportunities, unexpected opportunities to partner for greater impact. So purpose not only helps us strategize in exponential change, in the unknown, with conviction, and helps us continue to move forward, it also brings a lot of unexpected opportunity to the table, because we can actually look for people way outside our general field of expertise and bring them in to create a platform. It also means that we get trust from the people around us that see us acting on a purpose that's not just about making money, it's about impact at scale. So this is why purpose is so important. And I want to just push before we hit negative space per se into this idea of how we strategize with purpose, so we can hit our first breakout and have a quick chat about how purpose might work for us. So here are a couple of purpose statements. And as Shanae mentioned, I do work a lot with IKEA's head office. And what I'm impressed at with them is the way they use purpose to filter ideas, strategies, and innovation. So the purpose is twofold. It's a better everyday life for the many people. So an innovation comes their way, and I've thrown a few at them, which they haven't taken. So I feel this. So they'll first of all say, is that a better everyday life? Which means, is that a better life in the context of 4 walls, shelter, private space? You know, it doesn't have to be a house, of course, but it is a place where people feel at home, right? And if it is it for the many people? If it's not affordable or accessible or equitable, then they will work really hard to make that innovation more serviceable, more affordable. But if in the end, even though it's incredible, they can't make it for the many people, for the vast majority of the world, regardless of how good it is, they'll give it away. It means it's a very simple approach. It simplifies the complexity of what's coming at you, because you filter everything through this lens of, is that going to help me achieve this ultimate goal of a better everyday life for the many people? So I'd love you all to think for a second about the organization you're representing, the work you're doing on the daily. What is the core value of that work? And what is it that ultimately, what impact are you ultimately trying to achieve with that work? Have a think about that for a second. Now, does anyone not have, like, the thing is about purpose is, to date, there's been a lot of, we're going to do this by doing this as kind of an overall purpose, a mission statement, what have you. A purpose needs to be higher than this is how we're currently doing it. This is how we're currently doing it becomes the current strategy to achieve that purpose. And by splitting out, this is how we're currently doing it, from we want every child to be a leader, or we want every woman to feel included in every organization, whatever it is, right? We want racial equity across the board in every location, right? If that sits at the top, and this is how we're currently doing it, sits below it, it frees up your thinking to then look at how else can we achieve that ultimate goal. Here's how we currently do it. Here's our plan for the next whatever, but how else and who else has that ultimate goal that we can partner with for greater impact? So I would like to come to our first breakout where you can all meet each other. Ideally, we have groups of 5. How's that looking, Shanae? Are we feeling like it's pretty grouped?
We're good.
She's a legend. Okay, fantastic. Love it when someone takes care of that, because it's hard. All right, so you're going to go into groups of 5. I would like you to introduce yourselves. We don't have much time on this, but you'll be revisiting this group 2 more times with much more time. Quickly, your name and your organization. Most importantly, what is the current purpose of the group? And most importantly, what is the ultimate impact that your organization is trying to have on the world? All right, so I'm going to send you out there. We've got 5 minutes plus like a minute to get into your room, because that whole teleporting thing takes a second. Hop into your rooms and please meet. See you in 5.
All right, and I just opened the rooms, and if anyone has any trouble getting into their rooms, just please let us know.
Just hop up out of that for a second so I can see the chat, see what people are doing. Perfect.
All right, looks like people are going in.
Yay. I've just admitted Ron. Ron, you're just going to roll to your breakout room in about 1 second, maybe 2 seconds. Oh, does Ron need to pop a number so you know where to put him?
Oh yeah, yep. If you can drop that in the chat, that would be great.
Okay, so Ron, if you could just pop a number in the chat, whether you're 1 not-for-profit, 2 government.
Number 2.
Oh, number 2?
Yeah, I have made a mistake and fell out. I'm sorry. It was just
No worries.
transferring
No
me.
worries. I'll send you over right now.
Thank
Okay,
you.
Amber doesn't have, there's a couple of people. You can see all that on the chat.
Yep. Okay, I'm going to send it for you, Amber. Just 1 second. And Jordan, thank you for letting me know. Let me send it. All right, everyone should have got one. No problem. All right, if is anyone else here? Let me see. I've got a few people that have not joined.
It
Okay.
looks like we need to assign Amber, Shanae. Do you want me to
Yeah.
pick a room?
Oh, nope, I think, Amber, I thought she went.
Nothing's popping up for me. I don't know what's going on.
Oh,
And there's
it's
a
in mine.
button.
Unassigned
I hate it when
group.
that happens.
Okay, let me try it again, because let me see, I'll re-sign it. Okay, how about now, Amber? Did something pop up for you?
Yep, I got it now. Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Okay, anyone
Shannon.
else? Yeah.
Nice job.
Kayla?
So I allowed for a couple of minutes on that. So let's give them 5 from now.
Okay.
Kayla
great.
is also showing up in the unassigned for me, Chardonnay.
Okay, let me. Okay, I just sent it now. Kayla, you should be able to join room 2. Thanks, Kyla. That was weird. Well, hey, we've got it. And thank
Got
you.
it now.
Perfect. So they got their so it's like 11:24 now, and I can send a note like when they should be wrapping up, and we can bring
Yeah,
them.
8:28. So let's go 8:28. We'll wrap. We'll give them 1 minute before that because this is just me. This is just to get them.
Wow.
Welcome back. Welcome back. Okay. Is recording back on? Here we are. Okay. Is everyone back? Not quite.
Not yet. Not yet.
Got to kick them out of breakout rooms. The
That's
whole
been a good-
teleporting thing between breakout rooms just does my head in, doesn't it? It's just like.
Okay, good. Got some people coming
All right.
back.
Shall I start?
Just one moment. It looks like we've got. All right, now everybody's coming back right
All
now.
right.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Okay, so I just want to preempt. There's Kayla. Hang on, you'll let her in. I can't. Yeah, right. Okay, so again, it's called negative space, but it is full of opportunity. But the word negative is tricky, right? Because, in fact, I was sending you into the second breakout and I'm like, I can't send them in with all these negative space stuff. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But here we are, negative space. So negative space is essential for balance. Negative space is incredibly important in graphics, but it's also incredibly important in strategy because in fact, so if we say that the focus is positive, then the negative is everything else. It's the context, it's everything that's happening around the focus. And actually, if we remove the focus and only look at the context and look at what isn't, we learn a lot about what it is we do, why we focus on what we do, and what else we could add to the equation to have greater focus. So again, as I said, I'm going to share these slides later. So I've got a couple that have all this interesting blurb. I'm not reading it all. Nothing worse than people reading their slides. You can read it later. But negative space is essentially what isn't. So the most famous example in graphics is the arrow in the FedEx. And the arrow in the FedEx simply happened when a graphic designer started condensing the line spacing and went, oh my God, there's an arrow. And of course, the arrow indicates how quickly FedEx is going to deliver your stuff. So it's like a subliminal messaging within a text. And that's why it's so famous. But there are many other ways. So I have in the past done curriculum for the Australian school system where we remove in a history lesson the point of focus, the human of focus, or the building of focus, depending on what we're studying. Because as soon as you remove that key piece, your attention is drawn to what's happening around it. And this is incredibly valuable in getting better understanding. My whole adventurous thinking strategy is based on the theory of multiple intelligences, Howard Gardner. And that theory is that if we walk around and kick and prod a problem, an issue, an object, a system, a service, from a multitude of different angles and different perspectives, at worst, we gain better understanding of meaning. At best, we get a bunch of unexpected outcomes and possibilities that we really wouldn't have come across had we just stuck to our traditional biased way of thinking. So if I was to say to you, find the negative space on either the X or the S, I would normally say, what would you do? But because there's all of you, and I'm happy for everybody to unmute, right? Because it's a small group, and if you want to ask me something, you could. So if I was to say, find the negative space, most people immediately go to trace the outline of the letter. What that's doing is reinforcing that we go straight to what is positive. If you want to find negative space, and I'm just using these letters as an analogy because it's much more complex than this, we need to put a boundary around the thing we're looking at. A time boundary, a space boundary, a physical boundary, but also time. So if we're trying to look at the negative space in a service you provide, you might want to say, I'll look at it as the provision over 24 hours to one person, right? Or 1 hour to one person. You want to start with a really small boundary, because the thing about negative space is it is complex. It's not just physical space, it's time and it's emotion. And in order to find the opportunity, we need to know what we're looking for, and we need it to be possible to get there, right? So we want to start with a small time and space boundary around whatever it is we're looking at, whether it's a product over a 24-hour period, a service over a day period, or whatever it is, right? This is a super important part of negative space. So I want you all to think of yourselves in super healthy, going for a medical checkup, in a small waiting room crowded with sick people. You might have a screaming baby, you might have someone throwing up in a waste paper basket. How do you feel? Right, and this is the most direct way to think about the different types of negative space. If you're healthy and you're in a room full of sick people, the actual physical space between you and the next person is one thing, but the perceived physical space is something else. You're going to feel like they're closer than they are. The actual waiting time that you're waiting to see the doctor is one thing, but your emotional waiting time of how you feel like you've waited is going to feel much longer because you want to get out of there, right? What you don't hear from the doctor, what is not said, is another negative space opportunity. So a great example of this was American Express call centers in around 2012. They were getting great feedback in terms of the number of calls they were processing over a day. However, the customer feedback was terrible. People were very dissatisfied with the service. What they quickly realized was people felt like they were being rushed off the call in order for the call center person to get their numbers. And that is why at the end of every online call center call, the person asks you, is there anything else you need? Is there anything else I can help you with? Because they're addressing the negative connotation of rushing you off the phone. They're allowing you to end with, no, I'm good, which means you are now emotionally in a better place and you have received a call that you're happy with because you know now there's nothing else you wanted to know, right? That's a great example, but another great one is the Mayo Clinic. So the Mayo Clinic looked at the perceived waiting time for a doctor and realized that the emotional negative space was that people felt like they were waiting for way too long and it was a waste of their time. So it was the Mayo Clinic that came up with the Jack and Jill waiting room system that now you may get if you're with Kaiser or with another health provider, where you're in the waiting room, but then a nurse takes you to another station. They might weigh you, they might take your blood pressure, they might have a quick chat to you, and then they tell you that the doctor is coming in another 15 minutes. So the breaking up of the waiting is a way of addressing negative space and making it a more positive experience for everybody involved. So when we're looking for negative space opportunity, we're looking for actual physical space. Are things too close? Are things too far apart? What could we do better? Communicative space. What doesn't get said that people wish was said? How long something remains not done or not said? What is that period? And how can we shorten it or change the experience to be more positive? And emotional time. How long aren't you happy? You know, how long is your iPhone, if we're talking about time, how long is your iPhone off and not giving you any functionality versus on? And a great example of using that to better is when people sign up to let their iPhone be part of a huge computer crunching new gene sequences, right? So we need to know where the opportunities lie, and the opportunities lie both in emotional space, emotional expectation, physical space, and time. Does that make sense? If there's anyone who it doesn't make sense, to tell me. So I told you about the Mayo Clinic. I think that this is a great example for service delivery. If we consider the services that we deliver, are they too frequent? Not frequent enough. Is there a period where the recipient you think possibly isn't happy with something about that service? Is there a period where you, as the person delivering the service, are not happy about that service? What were people expecting that they didn't get? What didn't you tell people and why? Can you be more transparent, and would that make things function better? So I want you all separately, of course you're separate, we're all online. All right, I'd love you to have a think for 5 minutes about one of your core services and give it a time period. Perhaps it's just distributing to one person, one family, one community in one 24-hour period. You can cut the period down if it's more complex than that. And I want you to think about the physical space, the communicative space, the time space, and the emotions during that period, and specifically dig for when it's not working. And this is something that we never default to, right? We usually focus on what is working, who is happy. We go out, we ask our current customers what they want more of and what they love. But in this case, we're thinking about, not quite who isn't our customer, that's a whole nother level, but what are the areas that we could improve on if we just break it down into these different versions of space. So I'm going to give you a couple of minutes to think about that. And I want to stress also, it might feel like you're focusing on the negative. You're focusing on the negative to increase the impact that you can have, to optimize those spaces. We need a degree of negative space, but we can make it a positive experience, even if it's a waiting time, even if it's a pause or a distance. So have a little crack. And if anyone has any questions in this next 4 minutes, hit me with them. You would have to unmute if you want to hit me with them, though. I'll just be sitting here while you're all thinking.
I had one question.
Yes.
Is this in reference to like a customer or internal?
Whichever you want to choose. I just want you to get used to the thinking. So as a tool for testing that you can pop through these, it could be external, it could be internal.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, no worries. If anyone has one that they're kind of puzzling around how these pieces might be relevant, just throw it to me and we can do it together. I should have put on break music, shouldn't I? I wasn't even thinking of that. Now, hopefully, as you're doing this exercise, you're actually noting some opportunities that perhaps you hadn't thought of before, because when we go back into the breakout group, I want to discuss specifically one aspect that you've discovered in this exercise. I didn't want to throw you all back into breakout groups talking about everything negative about what you do. Can you imagine? Like, let's all get together and meet new people and talk about negative stuff. But please remember, this is opportunity. Okay, we'll do 1 more minute. Can I help anybody with any of this? Okay, hopefully you're getting some stuff. Is anyone getting anything that they're kind of excited about? It's a big ask, we've only just started. Now, bearing in mind, those of you who came a little bit late, I've created a LinkedIn group along with COACT. I'm posting all of these actual tools on that page. I'll be sharing all of these slides with you. So all the fine print you get to keep and work through at your own pace. That's why I'm not reading the slides. And the group, I'm hoping, will extend the idea sharing so that if introverts here or if people consider after this workshop and actually have some thoughts, there's a space that you can share and collaborate after the event and before next week's event. Right, so with that, what I'd love to do now is we're going to break back into our groups. And now we're going to just discuss one piece that you've got new insight into. I'd love you to just do a 1 minute on what it is you've discovered that you could work on to have greater impact. And then I'd like the rest of the group to chime in on that piece and suggest ways that you might change that negative space to deliver a better experience or a better product. So for instance, if you said, you know, I think that we actually reach out to these people a little too frequently because they're telling us that they don't want this level, and yet we really want to give them the information, say, then I would love for your group to suggest how you might continue to share that level of information, especially if it's current and it's relevant, in ways that may not irritate people, or in different ways, or in more group ways, or peer-to-peer. So we just want to brainstorm together on, here is a negative space opportunity, and how might each of you address that using the brain power of the group. This is just to get us into the habit of prompt idea sharing. And you don't need to know what you're talking about. It's literally imagination. So what could the response be? Does that make sense? All right, so we're going to go to our breakout groups. Now, this time you each have 3 minutes total, 1 minute to present or less, to present the opportunity that you want to explore. Like, here is where I think I have negative space. Here is where I'd like to improve this experience in some way, or this product or the service. And 2 minutes for the whole group to give you their feedback. I know Zoom isn't perfect because we can't talk over each other, but let's try and stick to that. And I'd like one person in the group to very quickly be nominated to time keep, but mainly to share one of these outcomes. So when you all decide you come up with a really good solution to one of them, we're going to share afterwards so we can get a feel for what the groups have talked about. All right, let's go to the group. And I'll duck in and out to just see how everyone's going.
So,
Thank
all
you,
right.
Shanna.
Thank you. I'm opening the groups right now. And I will quickly note, I did make a few changes. So if you are in a different group than you were the last time, just so we can get a more balanced or just more representation from various groups, please just be mindful and flexible with us. But I'm opening the rooms right now.
We're changing the groups around next time completely, but this time we're trying to get diversity in the groups.
And if anyone has any problems getting to the Zoom group, please let us know.
I just,
Oh, are we all back?
I think so.
Is
We're
it
all
time?
back. Yeah.
Is it time? We're back. Okay, so now I'm going to just shut that down. Now, what I would love for one person from each group, we're going to have to smash through this, to just share briefly something that they've developed in the group that's like a response to an issue. Just if your group came up with something, they all went, huh, that's actually really good. I would love you to share. So let's start with group 8. We'll work backwards because that's what we do, right? Group 8, what's something that came up during your session that you were all like, huh, that's good? And everyone can just unmute, otherwise it'll take too long, won't it?
I don't know what numbers we were, what group numbers.
Yeah, right. That's a good point. Okay, Shanae, you might just have to call upon one person from each group, like a teacher.
I was gonna say we were group 7. I can talk about
Well,
what
let's hit it.
happened in our
Let's hit
group.
that. Thank you.
So we got onto the topic of like workspaces and I guess like rules, if I don't know if rules is the right word, coming from organization leaders and determining whether people work in person or working remotely, and the balance of that, and whether like making, I guess, senior leaders having the flexibility to work from home, whereas non-senior leaders are kind of required to go to the office for a specific amount of time, and just kind of coming to be empathizing. So like the emotional time, empathizing with the different requirements that everyone has in terms of being able to go into the office or not go into the office and other responsibilities, and how you communicate that to your teams and other members of your organization in order to like get them to want to come to the office or not go into the office, and just being aware of like the different surrounding I guess catalysts that would make someone want to go into the office and not. So yeah.
Interesting. And so what did you, was there any like total pearl that you all went, actually that will resonate with? That's it.
Nothing like specific, but we did say just it's very difficult to please everyone, because these are times that everyone kind of has a different perspective on what is okay and what's not okay, whether wearing masks is
Yeah,
required or not. So just being able to, like, I guess not necessarily give everyone the freedom, but coming to combine like a conclusion that everyone agrees on is difficult, but then having that flexibility that like, okay, yes, you can come in the office. And then also we talked about the different views that sometimes someone coming into the office may get like a lot more work done compared to someone who's working from home or vice versa. So what is actually the right balance? We didn't come to the conclusion, but just navigating all of that is super tricky.
that's so hard, isn't it? Because I have people who go, oh, it's the best thing, I'm so productive. And I'm like, well, you clearly don't have small children.
Right,
clearly have fast
exactly,
internet.
exactly.
You clearly don't have, like, when I mean, I have fast internet and I have older children, but during COVID, everybody came home, all 4 of us were doing online presentation stuff out of the house, and it dropped nonstop. And I was like,
Mhm.
this is not working. Even though I love having you all home, you need to get out.
Yeah,
So I think
it's super
an
tricky
interesting
too.
thing.
Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. So how do we make people feel, have the comfort of home in the office,
Mhm.
whether they're bringing their dog or whether they've got childcare or whatever it is, right? But also, like, some people are more productive at home, but a ton of people don't have that luxury also.
Right,
Interesting. It's an interesting one.
it's tricky.
Thank you for sharing that. Okay, let's hit another group. Shanae, can you just, does anyone want to speak, or otherwise Shanae will grab you?
I can go next. I don't know our group number, but hey everyone, I'm Sarah with the Michigan Founders Fund. And our group talked a lot about mental health, both from when people who are delivering services to community members, how do you include mental health in some of that delivery service, because it can't be successful in programs from things like training programs or job placement and things like that without addressing mental health needs, but also from an internal organizational side. Everyone is struggling with mental health issues in a lot of different ways. And so how do you be really thoughtful and compassionate to your employees and make sure you have the processes and procedures in place to support them, but also make sure that the work is getting done. So it was kind of a dual problem that we were approaching. We did not come with like a brilliant solution, but one thing that we talked about that could be something to explore for organizations, particularly internal, if you are in one of those leadership positions on the senior leadership team or an HR team or people ops of sorts, of like, consider, making sure that your policies and procedures are thoughtful around mental health days, flexible schedules, making sure your insurance covers things like therapy and support for clients, for your employees, but also, an opportunity to potentially like hire in an outside coach to be available to employees. And so you as that senior leader don't have to act as coach in the same way. So you can focus, they can go to a private third party to do some of those. Coaching is not mental health, and we want to be very clear about that, but sometimes it requires some sort of extra support on the outside on top of therapy or medication or whatnot. So that was one idea we explored that, I've heard of people doing, but no one ever has actually seen it, but we thought we would share that with the group.
That's super interesting. I mean, our last workshop is going to be all on resilience and mental health. That's the book I wrote that, because as you say, we're in a global mental health crisis, and regardless of age, most people are suffering some form of anxiety or worry or mistrust or fear. It just is, it's a horrible situation. I think that's super interesting, that concept that you bring someone in, or maybe you share between 3 organizations or so. Because the thing about therapy, you can offer a benefit of therapy, but getting a therapist right now is really hard, and there's a lot of online, but, it'd be interesting to look at, could you have a resource that moved around a series of organizations also? Very cool. Thank you. All right. Who else can speak?
I'll go ahead. I'll jump into the pool here. My name is Donovan Neal. I'm Executive Director for Teach, Empower, and Achieve, and I have the privilege of being with Miss Lisa Braddock, Alex Haynes, and Caleb Perrin, I believe. And we were still trying to absorb the idea of negative space, but one of the things that stuck out as you were going through the slide in terms of what to do during the 5 minutes, in terms of how I was thinking about it for my organization. We're in the process of reviewing all of our programmatic options. And when you talked about in the slide, is there a lag in delivery? And so that was the communication timepiece. And so I immediately thought about, wow, what is the space? What is literally the time frame in which a recipient receives X course from when the time they receive the next service delivery. And what is that space? And is that an okay space for us organizationally? Or how do we feel about that? So your questions basically brought up those, served as a prompting to look at that as I have an upcoming program committee discussion with my board. It also brought out the need, one of the other points was the communication space in terms of what isn't said. And I think that was a piece that's also important to any type of facilitation or discussion, to make sure that you're capturing everything. And so, yes, there might be some things, you know, I just felt the need, even as I saw that, to make sure I asked the question, what hasn't been said? You know, when I'm in that group, what hasn't been said? And if it hasn't been said, why aren't we saying it? What do we prefer not to say? I think those are really profound questions to ask. And it opens up, again, as you mentioned, opportunity for potential impact. So speaking for our group in terms of how I can take this information, apply it moving forward, it's definitely something that I'm going to be asking in our coming meeting.
That's great. And I can add another one to that for all of you, and that is around the trust issue. You know, we have global mistrust right now, and it's really important to ask yourselves the hard question, who doesn't trust us? In both our stakeholder and the wider community, what groups, what individuals, what organizations don't trust what we're doing and why? And how can we go straight to that and make it a part of our strategy? Because trust being so important, and particularly in upcoming generations, the trust is in family and friends. People aren't going to news as a source. They'll ask family, friends, and TikTok what's going on, right? And so how do we become part of that trusted circle? The only way we can is to really understand who doesn't trust us. And again, it's asking the tricky questions that we never default to, because that's a hard question, right? If I think about who doesn't trust me, I kind of get sad. But that's not the point. The point is, how do we change that? How do we be more transparent, or what do we do in our strategy to address that straight on? Because it's the difficult stuff that really will make transformational strategy. So would anyone else like to have a quick share? Thank you for that. Anyone else from any of the groups affected by either the questions or the outcome from the group discussion before we move to the next piece?
I'll just jump in really quickly for group 3. So I guess the common theme that we had amongst all of us was trying to figure out how to more effectively serve either internal and or external customers and clients. And what is the best way to do that? You know, I think we all ran into issues of lack of resources, lack of time. So what is the most effective thing we can do today in order to improve that process? And although I wouldn't say that we really came up with any great answers, because it's a really hard question. One of the topics that was brought up, at least maybe as a first step, is really to focus on the problem itself and understanding the problem, because often people will jump to conclusions to say, okay, this is what I need to fix in order to fix the problem. Well, when in fact, when you actually talk to the person on the other end, they may have a completely different perspective. And so really focusing on the perspective of the other people that you're interacting with and learning from them to ensure that you're approaching it from a holistic standpoint and not just from your view of the world. And this is what needs to be solved. And I think starting with that process at least would be very beneficial to eventually achieving whatever goal you set forth.
It's fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, the next session, Sideways, is all about how do we move aside from our implicit bias, which is the way we see the world, right, through our eyes. And whilst you can't remove it, there are tools where you can kind of push yourself to work outside it by looking to the stuff that you don't normally look to. This is great. I'd also suggest such a great observation that it's how you frame the question, and it's not the answer, but it's actually the consideration that can give you massive value along the way. There's a great book. It's called A More Beautiful Question. Perhaps many of you have read it. I'm not sure. Actually, my older kid recommended it to me when she was studying communications, and it is amazing. A More Beautiful Question by Warren Berger. And even if you only read the first 3 chapters, which as a profoundly ADHD person, that's normally my go-to is the first 3 chapters. It has so much insight over how we've kind of lost or got lazy with the ability to frame up what the actual question is and what we're really looking for. And it's all about curiosity and then how we teach with questions, how we strategize with questions. It's a very cool book. So I'll throw that on the LinkedIn group too, actually. All right, so before I hit sharing economy, anyone else got anything else they want to share? And you'll have another opportunity to be in those groups in a second. Counting down, you'd have to unmute. No, good, great. Okay, I'm going to move on. And thank you, everyone. Thank you for sharing. This is great. All right, here we go. Bam. So I want to get you back in those groups. And in order to do it, I'm just going to play this next little piece, which is about the sharing economy. Obviously, the sharing economy is a fantastic example of the utilization of negative space. It's monetizing, if you're private, the times you're not using something that you own. And if you're public or if you're administration or corporate or whatever, it's optimizing spaces or services when you don't need them. Like, how can we share? And the beautiful thing about the sharing economy is just that. I mean, look, a spanner was thrown in the works during COVID. I think before COVID, you know, everybody thought that the world was moving towards sharing and not ownership and all this other stuff. You don't need a car, you can just get a share ride. Then we have this crazy spreading virus, and all of a sudden we need to have our own private cocoon space, and we need to have it very sanitized at all times, right? So the sharing economy kind of took a hit in that its whole essence is sharing, and in terms of public space, bringing people together. But you know, as we've come up with different ways to deal with disease spread and everything else, I firmly believe that you know, what COVID has also shown us is we need community. And humans need physical interaction. We need proximity, and we need to feel belonging. And so we need our groups to come together. So the sharing economy is super interesting because it's this idea of when aren't we using this, or when does it have less value, and who can we collaborate with to actually optimize the use of our space, our service, our brains, whatever it is, right? And how, while doing that, do we create community? What is the community that we're creating? So if you consider private, it was a heat wave here just last week, and we were all on the app Swimply going, where is the local swimming pool that we can go and use? There weren't that many in Marin County where I live. I guess it's not a very sharing mentality. So I just went and jumped in the neighbor's pool. But, you know, this idea that you have a swimming pool and you're happy to share. Airbnb, you have a room and you're happy to share. Whether it's during a crisis when you open up the room to bushfire victims like we did or whatever, or whether you're actually running this as income on the side. This whole idea, you have money to spare, you'll join Lending Club and lend it, right? It's not only monetizing what you have, but it's actually building a community and a feeling of sharing, which is fantastic for just basic human mental health, unless someone violates it, but you know, assuming they don't, right? This is great. And then we have public space, and food trucks are the best example. Pop-up shops are great too, right? But food trucks, the fact that we had car parks and large spaces that were only utilized a portion of the time. And then we had restaurants that were incredibly expensive overheads and profitable for a small amount of time and then hemorrhaging cash for a lot of the time. Up came ghost kitchens if you wanted to go in and use a restaurant's facilities after hours. But the flip side of that is, do we really need the restaurant, or can we bring the food to the people? And, you know, we're seeing a lot of varieties of pop-up restaurants, pop-up kitchens, but the food truck is your classic variety where we create these vibrant communities for tiny periods of time. And that's expanded now to, you know, can you sell things from the back of the truck other than food? Is it a craft market? Is it a food truck? Is it a not-for-profit or a library or some sort of tech teaching? You know, so this idea of what is the space we have that's valuable, but we're not using it 24/7, or what is the service we provide, but we only provide it in this amount of time, and actually it will be more valuable to more people this way. And so I think this is a really interesting opportunity for all of you in your groups to consider what you have, whether it's physical space, a brains trust, a type of service, and what would happen if everybody in that group got together and pooled what they have. What impact could you have And this is really just an exercise in idea sharing. Like the breakouts to date, it's not about a solution necessarily. It's about practicing free idea sharing. So don't get hung up on what you know, and definitely don't get hung up on what's possible right now. You consider that Leonardo da Vinci quote, do not be constrained by your present reality. What I'd love you all to do in your groups is consider what you have, consider when it's not used and how valuable it could be. And as a group, glom together and storm what would happen if we all pulled, this group pulled together in your 5. What would you create that has impact? It's a quick brainstorming. We're just going to practice idea sharing. I'm going to throw you back in there, and we have probably, I think, 12 minutes, something decent, right, for you all to go at it. You've all met each other. You've heard some of the problems. You've practiced a bit of idea sharing. I want you to get back in there and think about, when is your space, your physical space, your service, your brain's trust, and what would happen if you pulled not only what you have there, but what would happen if you pulled the people you serve? Like if you're out there working with a certain group of people and another organization is working with a different group of people, if you brought those groups together, could you achieve greater impact? Could there be a new community that actually moves the game forward? So fly and be free into the rooms. I thought it might help if I jumped into the rooms, but you're all doing really well without me. So I'm here as a resource if you need me, but honestly, I'm on that LinkedIn group anytime. So you all should just focus on like, what can you come up with? So here's the plan, man. You know each other. If you all pull your stakeholders, your people, your areas, your physical stuff, the abilities and core values you have, and your purpose, what is it that you could make in this tiny amount of time, come up with an idea that brings it all together, and then we're going to share. All right. Thank you. Fly and be free. Negative space.
All right, we just opened the rooms, and we'll drop the LinkedIn chat and the LinkedIn link in the chat.
Yes, we have that. We have that. How do I stop my share though? Whoops. Can't get it to stop sharing. There we are. That's better. We'll see. All right, so everyone, I've put the LinkedIn group in the chat if you want to come and join us. I've also put that book that I mentioned, A More Beautiful Question. Oh, and there's a real link. Nice job, Shanae. That's a little bit more useful than the one I gave. Now, I'm hoping you all had some fantastic discussions, and it would be great if you were to quickly share, like clearly you need to get to lunch or whatever you have going on at 12:30. So I can't drag you in here to share with us, but I would love it if you would pop down either in the chat and or on the LinkedIn page what your group came up with, and we can actually engage on that. If you put it on the LinkedIn page, I will add a little flavor and thought to that. Anybody that posts on the LinkedIn page, I'm super happy to add another layer of what else could you do, and maybe some questions or some references or some articles, because I more than anything want you all to continue to collaborate and idea share. You've got some tools. I'll post some of that stuff. You'll get the slides, but most important to optimism, most important to creative confidence is constant idea sharing. And I'd suggest, like, it would be fantastic if you think about the strategy and the way you outreach with the people you service, whether they're customers, whether you're an organization, not-for-profit, whatever. How can you help them idea share with you? In business, it's called a prosumer, where we invite the people we serve to actively feedback and work with us, not just fill in a survey and go, how do you feel about this? But actively share their ideas so that we can all improve together. And that's another type of community that, again, spreads optimism and deals with fear really effectively. So I'm going to just quickly share. I wanted to share some of those thoughts, but like we've run out of time, and that's on me for giving you so much time in the breakout, but it's your time, right? So here are the links. Here's my thank you. Thank you. Thank you for hanging in for an entire hour and a half in a ridiculously busy world. I really do appreciate it. And I do hope that you'll join the LinkedIn group and put your thoughts down there. I'd love people from each group to share what you came up with as the big idea. If anyone wants to share it, I'll hang on for a couple of minutes, but I know a lot of you need to go. So if anyone wants to share with me what they just came up with, hit me with it so I know that I had some effect. But yeah, otherwise, thank you. Jazz hands, thank you. Anyone want to share what their team came up with?
I'll share.
Oh, go ahead. Tara.
One of the things that we came up with, or we were starting to have a conversation around, was how to better coordinate and connect with other organizations that are doing work in the community. I often feel, and each of us had never heard of each other, at least I hadn't, right? And so I'm like, how can we, and others said, how can we better connect to know what the services are each of you provide? And so I was reminded of 411, how you used to be able to go into a 411 and type 411 and you can connect to other resources. And maybe it's time to pull that together or update it so that we know that these services are available and the individuals who are providing these services are available, because I did not know about Deloitte and the pro bono work that they do. But I can see myself calling them and saying, can you help me with some of these nonprofits that I fund to help with their capacity building?
Fantastic. Yeah, that's my hope. And we weren't sure, we kind of workshopped, how do we create a forum? And I figured most people are on LinkedIn. It's hard to use any social media platform because a lot of people don't want to support particular ones and whatever, especially Facebook, whatever, however you feel about those. But it's so important to have a forum so we can know who's out there. And particularly, I think important, the people that have stayed on for an hour and a half, right, are clearly interested in collaboration, idea sharing, and impact. So you straight away have this ready-made database of people who are like-minded in that respect. And I really do hope that you can all jump on a page and share some of the thoughts that were in that session so that we can keep that flow going till next week, but beyond that. Because, I'm just a facilitator. I just want to give you guys the tools. Really, at the end of the day, I'm all about the more idea sharing we can see in the community, in businesses, and across sectors, the better we will advance in a positive way. Good. Thank you for sharing that. All right, I don't want to dig into all of your time. It's 9:33. Thank you so much, COACT. Next week, Sideways, it's a different lens. It's a very different set of tools, all useful. But I do hope in the meantime, you'll join me on that LinkedIn page. And if you have any questions, hit me up. I'm super happy to respond because this was a lot. And I know that, things flow, right? In the course of the day, you might come up with some good stuff and I would love for you to share it with everybody. Okay, thank you.